Second here. Okay, so is that better? Oh, that's better. Okay, great. I mean, I don't look as good. I've got these little things hanging from my ears, but that'll work, right? Okay. Well, I am absolutely thrilled to be here. It's for me, this is a very unique experience. I mean, I'm in Dublin, but I'm not. And so to be doing it from my desk, and excuse the mess behind, I have a lot of books and things hanging around my office, and that's kind of what makes my life work. But I'm not sure what it looks like when you're looking at it from the other side of the ocean on my through the computer. But anyway, it is what it is, right? So fortunately, I still have my voice after very little sleep, but I didn't have to do as much talking as you did yesterday, Dave. So I guess that's the saving grace. So to really get into my story, it is shocking to me to think that I'm now in my seventh decade of being on this planet. But the most shocking and most wonderful part is that I am alive and well, and I'm the vitality doctor. But as you know, Dave, and many people who have heard me before know, it wasn't always that way. Because in 1989, I was 88 pounds in a wheelchair, given a week and a half to 2 weeks to live. I could not hold down any food. I could not hold down any liquids. The only thing I could do was suck on ice chips. So where did that all start? Well, let me go right back to my early years, because I think people always wonder, how did you get cancer? Whoever it is, how did you get cancer? How did you develop cancer? And cancer for me is a multifactorial thing. It's not one thing that causes it. So many people put all their stock in a great diet, and I do agree that a great diet is critical, because this is a physical body and it needs physical food going in, and it needs to be live food, not just food, which many people today are just surviving on food, not live food. But anyway, there's much more to it than that. So going back to my childhood, I'm a Scots lass from a place called Auchtermuchty in Scotland. So I'm a bonny Scots lass from way back. And we left Scotland when I was almost 6 and immigrated to Canada. At that particular point in time, my mother was diagnosed with a mental illness called paranoid schizophrenia. And so my childhood was a very tormented childhood with an alcoholic father and a schizophrenic mother. And so I mention all of that because those were the beginnings of the roots of discontent and probably malfunction in my body on many levels. Both of my parents were chain smokers as well, and we all know about secondhand smoke and the detriments of that in this particular point in history. So all of that I grew up with. I do have a brother, and he's alive and well. He's had a little health challenges here and there, but he is alive and well. But, going on from there, as I said, we immigrated to Canada, so we were yanked away from our family, who all lived in the UK, and we were literally on our own. So here we are, my brother and I, with a mentally ill mother and an alcoholic father who was never around. Anybody who knows anything about addictions knows that people who are addicted to anything are really emotionally not available. And so my father wasn't emotionally available. I loved my father, and I loved my mother in her own way. There's a particular way that you love someone who's going through those challenges. But whatever it is, children love their parents regardless, I think, most often. And I attempted to earn and gain my mother's love for my entire life while she was alive, up until probably the last 10 years before she passed on. But anyway, that's another story for another day. The point is that, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, and at the age of 14, I could not handle the abuse any longer. There was a tremendous amount of physical, violent abuse in my home. And I finally, at the age of 14, ran away and could not get a job and lived on the streets of Toronto through 2 winters and a summer for a year and a half, and it was really a very, very challenging and tough time. I will not deny that. However, when people say to me, if you had it to do over again, would you? I would say absolutely. I definitely learned street smarts. I did not become a prostitute or a drug addict as a result of being on the streets. I just want to really clarify that, because what I learned later on is that I have what they call the survivor instinct. I was determined to survive and thrive somehow. I don't know if I really understood what that meant at that particular point in time, but I definitely knew that I was not going to become what everybody expected me to become, which was a drug addict, alcoholic, bum on the streets, and a prostitute to earn money. So I begged for money, and I did end up begging for dimes to make phone calls to try to get jobs, but no one would hire me until I was 16. That's the age of being able to work in Canada. At least it was when I was that age. So, and we're talking a long time ago, as you know, because as Dave mentioned, I'm over 60. God, it's just unbelievable to me how fast those years have gone by the way. So make the best of every year. So anyway, I got off the streets at 16. I immediately found myself immersed in an eating disorder, and it was a serious eating disorder. I tried to go home again to finish high school. That was a nightmare, to be quite honest. After about 10 months, maybe even less, I was gone again. But in the process, I developed this massive eating disorder and literally went as low as 68 pounds at my lowest, and as high as 250 plus pounds at my highest weight. So I really know what it's like to be all ranges of weight. So, many times people will look at me now and say, if I mention anything about weight and how to control it, they'll say, well, what do you know about it? How would you know what that feels like? Well, been there, done that. So that was the next leg of my life. And in 1985, I finally conquered the problem. I finally, literally took charge, found out what the issue was, dealt with it, which was my mother, dealt with it in person, verbally, and then walked away from that illness. And people who say, once you're an eating disordered person, you always are, that's not true. That day, May 12th, actually, I believe it was, the day after my birthday, May 12th, I conquered the eating disorder once and for all. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't gained a few pounds and lost a few pounds here and there, but it's never been huge amounts. It's just a few pounds, like everybody else, You go off on a tangent at the holiday season and gain a few pounds or whatever, and then you lose it because you get busy with your life again. I don't think about weight like most people did and like I used to. I literally was on a yo-yo syndrome for most of those years that I had the eating disorder. Now, I'm just finished, conquered that problem, and in September of 1985, I noticed a spot on my face, actually under my eye, that I'd had for years. I'd been hit by a baseball when I was 12 years old in the eye and had this blue spot, but it had completely transformed itself into a horrible looking, black and crusty looking mess under my eye. And being very vain, I went to the doctor and said, get this thing off my face. I had no clue what it was. And when the doctor said this might be melanoma, I still had no clue what that was. I mean, I was working in healthcare at that point in time. I had gone through school later on and become a dietitian and was working as an administrative dietitian and had done some clinical work, and I understood the illnesses that impacted the aging population with cancer, such as uterine and ovarian and prostate cancer, breast cancer, etc. But I had no clue what melanoma was, just that it was a skin cancer. Thank God I had no idea what it was, because it goes deep fast. And had I known that, maybe I would have taken that on and not been here today. But because I didn't know what it was, I literally did not embrace it. But a week and a half later, I was diagnosed with uterine cancer, stage 4. Now, 2 of my great aunts died from that illness, but they were more than double my age when they were diagnosed and died from it. So here I was, 35 years old, diagnosed with terminal cancer, basically, stage 4 uterine cancer. And I went through 3 rounds of chemo, and I literally spent more time talking to the great white telephone in the bathroom than I did getting well. And if you know what I'm talking about, I was throwing up left, right, and center. And I knew that if I continued with this, I would probably not be here. Back in the 80s, you have to understand it was just bolus chemo. That's what they did. They just gave it to you, and then they sent you home, and I think basically to die. But, some people made it and some people didn't. I decided I had to stop it. Now, when people say, what do you recommend to your clients? I simply tell them my experience, and they have to make their own decisions. I can't make that decision for them. But there is an expression that you can cut, burn, and poison the cancer cells or the tumors, but unless you change the underlying conditions, you will not be able to stop it from returning. And basically that's what happened for me. I tried everything. I left no stone unturned. I literally tried every alternative method, every supplement anybody mentioned, every procedure. I traveled around the world looking for the magic bullet. And I did not, unfortunately, find a magic bullet that lasted. I went in and out of the experience with cancer 5 times. And in the 5th bout of cancer, I had 2 bouts of melanoma and 3 bouts of uterine cancer. So in 1989, as I said, there I was, given a week and a half to 2 weeks to live, 88 pounds, could not eat or drink anything, and could only suck on ice chips. And the miracles then began. At that particular point in time, I had basically given up, and I couldn't stand the pain, and I couldn't stand the experience anymore. It was awful. There's no words that can explain it. You have to be there, and I don't wish that on anyone, but you have to be there to understand fully. Anyone who's been there knows what I'm talking about. Now, at that particular point in time, as I said, the miracles began. I was dragged off to a home show in the wheelchair and introduced to the Vitamix man. He was cute and young and smart as a whip. And I have to tell you, I hope I never quit noticing an attractive looking man or woman. I think that that's the blessing in life, is to be able to notice and accept and acknowledge beauty around you, not just in people, in everything, but also in people. And so this young man, Jim, the Vitamix man, asked me if I could, if I'd like to partake of some of these concoctions he was making, and I just literally told him there was no way. I didn't want to make a fool of him or me. And so he asked me if I could suck on ice chips, and I said, yeah, I can. He said, great. So I will make this concoction for you with cantaloupe. Now, what I had not really put together then was that cantaloupe is actually one of the most nutritionally dense of all of the melons available. So he took this cantaloupe and carefully scooped out the fruit and the seeds and put it into this Vitamix, which I refer to as a 2-horsepower lawnmower for food. You just throw the food in and it turns into liquid, But often it's a thick liquid. With fruits, it's a little thinner than with most vegetables. And then he added ice and sucanat, sugarcane natural, to sweeten it, because cantaloupe in Canada in the winter was not particularly flavorful on its own. And he made this ice chip concoction with the seeds and the fruit. And lo and behold, I held it down. And from there, I lived on this for 2 months. I mean, literally lived on it for 2 months. Now remember that I was given a week and a half to 2 weeks to live. Now, what do you think I gained after outliving the prognosis by almost 6 weeks? Well, I gained what they call hope. H-O-P-E, hope. And from there, we added in, as tolerated, other fruits and then vegetables, and then eventually I had to get protein into my body because cancer is very, very catabolic. And so what we ended up doing was adding in, I had forgotten to mention that I was vegan before I was diagnosed with cancer. Now, I wasn't necessarily a healthy vegan like I would be today. I'm vegan plus fish today, but back then I was working in hospitals and I was working very long hours. And so if I got rice in a hospital cafeteria, what would it be but white rice? What was most of the bread? It might have looked brown in color, but that was from the molasses they added to make it the white bread colorful. It was brown bread because of molasses, not because of fiber. So I wasn't getting the healthy foods that I would get today. I know much better how to choose a really wholesome, healthy diet. But at that time, I was eating whatever I could get in the hospital cafeteria. And if it was steamed vegetables, you know what they're like in any kind of cafeteria. They're usually cooked to death. And I know that they are in the UK because I was over there a few years ago doing seminars in the hospitals. So it's the same thing as over here. They were overcooked, oftentimes almost mush. And the best salad you could get back then in a hospital was made with iceberg lettuce, which is the lowest nutritional density of any leafy green that's out there. And most of it is genetically modified in North America, grown genetically with genetically modified organisms. So it wasn't a nutritionally healthy product at all. So that was kind of my diet then compared to what it would be now. So I wasn't getting the nutritional density. So that was, gradually we added in tofu because remember I said I was vegetarian, vegetarian. So we added in tofu in smoothies with the fruit and in vegetables for soup. And it was all creamy to begin with. And then eventually, as tolerated, we added more solid food so that I was getting more density from real solid food. Whole vegetables, whole fruits. And tofu not all blended together into soups and smoothies. So that was, and then finally, on the nutritional part, we added in fish because when I looked at research, it talked about ancestral diet and being Scottish or an island person, what do they eat? Fish. And so that was the one thing I had missed. I had never missed beef or pork or lamb. I still, I know that Scotland's the country of sheep and lamb, mutton, but I've never really acquired a taste for it, thank goodness. And so I lived on, I added fish to my diet. I didn't live on it, but I added fish to my diet, and I gained energy from that, believe it or not. So I am a vegan plus fish at this point in my life. Now, I want to go back to that miracle weekend, though, because the other aspect of it, which we'll be addressing later on today, was a thing called, well, I'll get into that in a second. I met the great Dr. Bernie Siegel. I had read his books. I'd been introduced to him through audio cassette tapes back then because we didn't have CDs and DVDs. So, people introduced me to him, and then I got dragged off the next day of that same weekend where I met Jim the Vitamix man on the Saturday. I met Dr. Bernie Siegel on the Sunday. And of course, they wheeled me up to the front of the room, which is where they parked me, and I couldn't avoid him. And he came over and asked me what my story was. And of course, we all have our story, and I began to tell him a bit about my story on the break. And he stopped me and he said, "Have you ever written a gratitude journal?" And I said, "A what? Are you out of your mind? I mean, look at me. I'm in a wheelchair. I've been given a week and a half to 2 weeks to live, and you're asking me if I've written a gratitude journal? What am I going to write in it?" And he said, "Well, I think you have a lot of things to be grateful for. People got you here today," which was a big deal. "And you've got people who are caring for you and loving you. I think that's a pretty big deal." I didn't really fully embrace that at the moment in time that he was mentioning all of this, but the next day I began a gratitude journal, but very begrudgingly, because I sat there in Toronto, and anyone who's ever lived in Toronto or the UK, actually, I know it's the same over there, and Ireland, you get a lot of rain. In the winter in Canada, you get a lot of overcast, dull, miserable days and a lot of snow. And as I looked out the window on yet another overcast, dull, miserable day, I prayed. And I said, God, if you're out there and you want me to do this, you got to give me a sign. And you have to understand, my faith was waning there because of what I'd been going through. So what happened was that can you see me okay here? Because it keeps cutting in and out on my computer. You say, okay, good. So what happened was that after I prayed, the sun literally shone through for about 1 minute through those clouds. And you have to understand, this was within minutes, if even that, of me praying for some sign. So, I mean, I ask you, if that happened, would you consider that a sign? Would you consider that maybe that was a sign? I know for me, I did. And because I considered that a sign, I did what the great doctor said. He said, if you can't think of anything else, write the same thing 5 times. So that day I wrote, Dear God, thank you for the sun. Thank you for the sun. Thank you for the sun 5 times. 5 times. But here's the great news. The doctor had said to me, you know, what you focus on expands. Well, at the end of 1 month, I wrote 137 gratitudes in 1 day. And they were all different. They were all different. And 22 years later, I'm alive and well, and I'm the vitality doctor. So I really got that what you focus on expands. And why not focus on gratitude, things to be grateful for? Because whatever you focus on, you'll get more of. And I certainly have gotten a lot more to be grateful for. Now, I want to be really clear here. I'm human. And I have my ups and downs like everyone else. And I have challenges just like everyone else. But the good news is that when I do that gratitude journal every day, I can eliminate the ups and downs, or at least reduce the stress that's created from those ups and downs by a significant amount just by doing a gratitude journal and focusing on things to be grateful for. So it's very powerful, you know, when you think in terms of what you've got to be grateful for. Wow, I mean, it's a pretty powerful thing to be able to do. So, you know, flipping forward from that point forward, I left Canada. I woke up one day and the snow was coming down heavily, and there was a message in my head that said, leave here and go somewhere where it's sunny and warm, because I didn't believe I had very long to live. I mean, at that point, you have to understand, I still had gone in and out of cancer 5 times, so in my head I was probably going to get cancer again. However, I created this gratitude journal process, and I started learning about whole food nutrition. I had a Vitamix machine. There's a whole story around that, but I don't want to spend the time going into that right now, maybe later today. But the point was that I literally left Canada, came down to the States, and my life took a different direction, a different turn. And I ended up working in the health care field, becoming a cancer care practitioner, working with people with terminal cancer, and many times seeing them recover as I had, many times seeing people not recover, but at least leave this planet as on a from a more holistic perspective, and at least having tried and coming from a more positive perspective. So that was basically the journey to now, and I ended up working as the Director of Nutrition for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, which completely changed everything for me. It opened up the world to me. I started writing books. My first public book, I'd written books in Canada for the government, but my first public book was called 5 Minutes to Health, and then I wrote Laugh at Stress and Love Life, and then I Can't Believe It's Tofu, and several other little books in between, and then Instant Energy, the 5 Keys to Unlimited Energy and Vitality, which is perhaps the most comprehensive book on holistic health that's been written at least by a dietitian. And so that was the one direction, and from there, speaking has always been my love, and that whole world opened up, and I've literally traveled around the world speaking and writing, and to people from all over, and doing television and radio interviews, etc. So I've had a wonderful, an incredible life from that point at which I was given a week and a half to 2 weeks to live. So today, as I said, I basically teach instant energy strategies, 5-minute strategies that anyone can do anywhere, anytime, because what I learned was that I didn't have the energy to do anything that took a lot of time. And so I started learning how to do things quickly and easily. Then I started working with people who were either too ill or too lazy to do anything for more than 5 minutes. So I started teaching easy, quick 5-minute strategies, and that's basically what I'm known for today. And that's how Dave and I met, because he also believes in systems that work, that don't require a lot of time, but they require commitment, and that's the same with what I do. And we started to look at how we could work together and realize that people want to be young and ageless forever. And especially, I can tell you from my perspective as a person in my 7th decade, I know that I'm not going to look as young as someone 20 or 30. That's not the point. I want to have the energy and vitality of someone in their 20s and 30s and healthfully achieve that. So that's where I come from. And as I said, that's how Dave and I came together and decided that we were going to create this Young and Ageless boot camp and help other people have what we have. And I'm just feeling so blessed to be here with you, even though it's through the internet or the computer. Isn't technology amazing? And I thank you for being there too. Yes, it's almost 2:15 here. Amazing. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like me to answer, or does that pretty much cover it? Yes. I mean, oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing that you and I have talked a lot about, Dave, is the whole idea of mindset. And, when you set your mind or your intention to do something, it's amazing what you can achieve. And I mean, we all know that it can work negatively as well as positively. A lot of us set the mind intention or mindset without realizing it of I'm not good enough or no one's going to be interested anyway. And so that's the negative mindset that, that was one of the things they talked about yesterday at the other event that I was speaking at. And, it was all about the fact that we can also set negative ones. So we have to be conscious of what we're doing. And you and I have talked a lot about this, Dave, and it really is about, when you find yourself going down that path of immediately shifting your consciousness and your mind and setting your mind on the more positive, more productive, more globally expansive ways to fulfill your passion and your destiny. Absolutely. And then we're going to do the presentation through PowerPoint after this, right? So we'll be moving into a different system. Okay, great. Perfect. So yeah, one of the key things that I've always really understood is that there's, in our lives, there's a thing called belief. And many of us have what we call limiting beliefs, those blocks that stop us in our pathway. And believe me, I grew up with those. I mean, I was told I wasn't pretty enough. Well, actually, I was told by my father that I was ugly. And he had said it meaning simply to not have me rely on my looks. And so I grew up believing that I was ugly and nothing about me was acceptable. So, that was a really huge challenge to overcome. That was a big limiting belief. But there were other limiting beliefs that I grew up with. For the Scottish tradition is, Scottish people are very frugal. And my father and mother had this philosophy, if you don't have the cash, you don't buy it, which was probably a good philosophy when we look at what's happening in the world today. But the thing was, it was like money doesn't grow on trees, and, what do you think we are? We made of money. And so my brother and I both grew up with very, very limiting beliefs on money. But we also grew up with the idea and the belief that we couldn't make a decision for ourselves. We were never allowed to as children. And I'm bringing these up because many of you might relate to this in some way, shape, or form. We're taught certain things about ourselves without even realizing that we're being taught those things. They're embedded within our consciousness from very early in life, from very early age. And so we don't realize how they're impacting our lives until we're older. And so it becomes very important at some point to become conscious of that. And thank goodness there are many programs teaching children about these particular philosophies now that didn't exist when I was a kid, and probably didn't when Dave was a kid either, because it's pretty new in our history. But the point is that many parents today are really looking at how to stop this kind of belief structure in their children once they become aware of it themselves. So it's first of all becoming conscious of the limiting beliefs that we have, or the negative beliefs or the negative thought patterns that we have. And most people don't realize that it's as simple as the power of our words. I mean, obviously thoughts create the words that come out of our mouth. So it starts with thoughts, and then the words, and then the behavior, and then the results. So you're going to get results based on what your behaviors are, which stem from your thoughts and your words, which also stem from the root cause of your beliefs. So any thoughts you have stem right from those beliefs. So you've got to forget about changing behavior. We all know that behavior changes don't work, right? I mean, people will change their behaviors briefly, but unless they change the underlying conditions, that's your beliefs in this case, nothing is going to stay changed. The behavior will revert back to the old behavior patterns as soon as there's any kind of stressor in your life, or any kind of negative thing that happens in your life. So you have to get back to those beliefs and change them. So, the philosophy is to write down your negative belief patterns. And if any of you have ever done any of Tony Robbins' work, or he's the one I think about, because in, Date with Destiny, that's what you do. You write down all those negative beliefs about yourself. And then you have to take those beliefs and reframe them and recreate them as positive beliefs. So, I'm not good enough. I'm great as I am. I am not pretty enough. I am beautiful. I hate myself. I hate the way I look. I reframe that. I love myself. Now, I'm just giving some pretty simple examples. There's not enough money in the world. There's lots of money. There's an abundance. We just have to look at the ocean to realize that there's an abundant flow of things when we see. It's what we see, and our beliefs impact what we see. If we believe there's not enough, there will never be enough. If we believe there is enough and that there's abundance, we will see abundance all around us. It's like when people come to California, a lot of times they'll look around and go, oh my God, there's no trees. It's so brown. It's ugly. That's a belief that they have. I look at it and I go, wow, look at the expansiveness of that land. Unbelievable. It's awesome. Right? Now that's because I choose to see it that way. And there are times when I worry, like everybody else in California, about not enough rain if we haven't had it for a couple of years, because we know that that could result in fires, which we've all experienced. If you live here long enough, you will, just like you'll experience earthquakes. But the limiting belief is that, like my father said, how can you live in a place where there's earthquakes, floods, droughts, riots, and he went through all the negative stuff. This was when my father was alive, about California. And what I saw was expansiveness of consciousness, the expansiveness of the ocean, the expansiveness of the mountains and the land. I mean, just the same view, same picture, different view, depending on belief structure. I'll give you another example. My mother went to Alaska. I had always dreamed of going to Alaska. And so when I found out, and my mother is deceased as well, 2001. But when my mother talked about, Alaska, she said, oh, it was horrible. It was just on, mountains and snow and ice. And so she saw no beauty. She saw only monotonousness. Now, I went to Alaska, and I was in complete awe. I was gasping for air sometimes because I was so taken by the incredible expansiveness of the ice caps and the high mountains and the blue. You know, if you've ever seen a glacier, there's this blue from the age of the older the icebergs are, the bluer they are, apparently. I learned so much. My brain was in overdrive when I was there. My heart was in overdrive. Now, that was two people seeing the same view, but coming from a different belief structure. I come from, overall, not always, but I come from, there's abundant beauty all around me. And so I see beauty in things that people don't see beauty in. Now, those are just some examples, but your beliefs structure everything else in your life. What kind of thoughts you have, what kind of words you use. And I want to focus on words for a minute, because you can actually get to the point of changing your beliefs by changing the words you use. You have to become conscious about it, but it's like, you know how we always say, don't forget to take your medicine, or don't forget to eat your fruit, or don't forget to whatever. Or break a leg. Oh my God, when people say to me, break a leg, I'm going on a stage to speak and they say break a leg. I don't want to go and break my leg. I want to go on the stage and I need both my legs because I like to walk around the stage. So I mean, it's like the words that people use are very powerful. How many times have you heard somebody say something like, and I'll just use break a leg, and 5 minutes later this person's walking up on the stage and they trip and fall on the way up. And that has happened. That has actually happened recently to a friend of mine, walking on the stage after someone said break a leg. We don't realize the power of our words. So when you say don't forget, the universe does not understand that you just said don't forget. It gets forget. The don't or the not don't figure into the universal consciousness. So when you, instead of saying don't forget, because automatically that's planting in your brain forget, say instead, remember to do blah, blah, blah. Remember is a positive. Don't forget is a negative. And the universe literally does not understand negative energy. So, I mean, it's there, but it will reflect in your life as negative things happening. So whenever I hear myself, and sometimes you don't catch yourself, but most of the time when you become conscious of what you're saying and the power of your words, just think about the energy of, and I just want you to close your eyes and as I say this, don't forget to wash your hands after you've gone to the bathroom. We'll use that one, right? Don't forget. Now, think about, remember to wash your hands when you're finished in the bathroom. Now, which one impacts you the least, with the most positivity? And if you really think about it, okay, we'll do it again. Don't forget to wash your hands. Okay, now the next one. Remember to wash your hands. How do you feel? Think about that. I mean, when I close my eyes and I feel those two experiences, the remember feels so much better. So it's really about coming from that place of positive words, positive expressions, and positive beliefs. But it really does stem from going back to your if you need to, back to your childhood or your teen years, and writing down all those beliefs you have about yourself and about life, right? About your life, about life in general, about the world in general, about the universe, about God, whatever they are, write them all down. I have a book, like a three-ring kind of binder book, that I write into that book all of these negative beliefs as they come up. Now, I don't have as many of them now, but when I first started doing this exercise, I had pages of them. Pages. Every time one would come up, I would write it down. But the point is, I would have pages of these. And then what I ended up doing was, I ended up getting rid of all of those negative beliefs by then writing, as I told you what I learned from Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny. I wrote, and I think Unleash the Power Within, he does this as well. Then I started writing down all the beliefs in a positive format. I'm beautiful just as I am. I have enough to offer the world just as I am. I am whole and complete. Instead of being fragmented or I'm not good enough, I am whole and complete. I love life. I had a real negative philosophy about life. everybody's out to get me. I mean, this is way back when I was younger. And the way that I reframed that was, everyone loves me as I am, or everyone that is close to me that I love loves me. However it works for you to word it, but it's rewording all of those beliefs and then repeating them. You do have to, in one of the processes I use with my full day seminars on stress, I literally take people through the process where they rewrite their beliefs, and then what they have to do is 3 times a day, they'll take 3 of those beliefs for maybe a week at a time, and they will repeat them 3 times in the morning, 3 times at lunchtime, and 3 times in the evening. It's even more effective if you take those 3 beliefs that you're trying to change that week and repeat them 10 times in the morning, 10 times midday, and 10 times in the evening. So it's best just as you wake up in the morning and just before you go to bed at night, or just before you go to sleep at night, and then sometime during the middle of the day. But that's a really great little exercise to change those limiting beliefs and recreate them as positive, expansive beliefs. So that, I could go on forever about this topic, but I'm going to just close it at that, because I think using that exercise you can change a lot in your life, and then open it up to questions in case anybody has questions. I think so. Hi, Shane. Until you, Great question, Shane. Why would you write the negative beliefs down first? It's because you have to know what's going on inside of you in order to change it. So if you don't know what it is that's negative that's going on for you, you can't change it. Does that make sense? Yes. Yes, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to write it down to get it out of your system and onto paper. And also too, once you've written it down, then you can actually take that belief, right? And you can rewrite it in a positive way. So, because you can't change a negative belief until you know what it is and then reframe it and rewrite it. And then internalize the positive to replace the negative. I'm sorry? Oh yeah, actually, thank you, Shane. That's a great what I do with my clients, and we have to get permission to do this. But we'll either write it all down, rewrite them on a new page, and then rip up that page. But even a better process that we use at retreats is we actually have everyone take the paper and crumple it all up with all the negative beliefs after they've written all the positive ones out, and throw that into the fire and burn it. It's a great process because it's like a cleansing when you do the burning, when you burn it up. And another exercise on that same note, we all have all these shoulds in our lives. I also encourage my clients to write down all the shoulds that they have in their life. And I don't tell them till they've written them all out, but I have them write out all the shoulds. And then what I have them do is take the should list and throw it in a fire as well. Crumple it all up and throw it into a fire, and it's gone. Because you're never going to do them, why keep them around? They just eat you up. Make sense? Great. Wait, I think so. Oh, thank you. Well, you know what they say, it takes one to know one.